really is not developed till you're 25, and it takes longer for men. So, so we know that we got that struggle. You can't just work on one individual person and then keep them in that same environment.
Right.
And a lot of people just have a lot of trauma, man. It's a lot of trauma out here.
Is it that this privilege, this white privilege, can continue to do what it does? Agree with some of his viewpoints.
Yes,
he gets the wrong messenger because he's been privileged his whole life.
But as a politician, I'm not feeling what you did. All of these people, Delaware, we had like 6 people.
Well, small state.
Well, nah.
And as long as you're doing that for both the minorities and the majority, then we're fine with that. Good evening. This is Dr. Curry.
Shanae Darby.
And welcome to The Source. Today we don't have our co-anchor, brother Kobe Owens with us. He's out saving the world, as we often say about Shanae when she's away. But Shanae, it's just us two today. And there's a couple things I want to start off our show today with. One, I want to start off with the shootings in the city. Now, on Tuesday night, there were several things that occurred. There was 2 different shootings, or should I say the police found 3 people shot. 2 of them, they found them right before 11:30. One was 23 and one was 22. And the other one a little bit later, who is down critical, I was found, he's about 22 years old. One was on Jefferson Street, which is the 22-year-old. And the other one, the 23 and the 24-year-old, was on North Locust Street near Vanderbilt Avenue. What's going on with the shootings in our city?
Yeah, so I repeat and say the same thing with shootings in our city. If we don't have investment into people, in regards to housing development, into schools and education, like all of that, right? You're going to see crime. Like, I'm not shocked to see crime. If you don't invest into a neighborhood, then crime, of course, is going to happen. So I'm not shocked. I just would love to see the community kind of come together and figure out ways that we can address some of our needs so this doesn't continue to happen. I don't have a lot of faith in the government being able to solve this. I think it's really going to have to come out of the community to really address some of the issues.
But I think sometimes that's kind of hard because the community doesn't have the resources. So how does a community solve a violent issue with violence and drugs? Which I know that I know what you're saying, but I just want to make sure we clear. How does a community do this when we are paying our taxes, so that the government can aid in this endeavor?
Right. So there has been incidents in the past where community has came together to solve issues for our own community. Like, you think of like movements like the Black Panther Party. The reason why we have WIC is because they started with, like, that was a community program. They started rehab programs, Black Men's Development Center in over West Side in Wilmington. So the community can pull together their resources that we do have and figure things out. Now, do I think that's the only answer? No. Do I think government has a play in it? Yes. But do I think it's what we're asking for? No. I think we're putting too much into, especially Wilmington City Council. Don't put too much hope in us. But I think that the government does play a role. I don't think it's solely on the community, but the community, I think there has to be pulling together of our resources, which might be our funds, our skills, putting together to figure out how do we solve this. We need my opinion, a group of Black men going out on these corners, talking to these men. That's not happening.
Well, if you look at the ages of these young people, for example, this is not the 16 to 17-year-olds. This is 23, 24, and 22, 23, and 24.
Right.
What group of men without the resources of government, would be able to have this kind of conversation with already who are guys who already consider themselves as men.
Right. So they're really not. So I worked at Wilmington Job Corps Center, and it's from 16 to 25.
Okay.
There was nothing different between the 16-year-old and the
Wow.
20-year-old, right? And a lot of times we think just because someone turns 18, it's a magical number that they all of a sudden become an adult and they know things.
Mhm.
They don't know.
Right.
I met 16-year-olds and 24-year-olds who don't know the same thing and reading on the same grade level,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times we think that because of the number that they should be thinking or acting a certain way, but they're not. They're still operating because of the trauma, because of their experiences growing up. They're still behind.
Wow.
They're still operating as a whatever their trauma setback is. They're still acting that age. So a lot of times we see the age, this age group, that 20-year-old age group needs help too. And your brain really is not developed till you're 25, and it takes longer for men. So, so we know that we got that struggle here. So it's kind of like we have to wrap around services to young adults too, because young adults are just because we think 18 and then we level them off into the world, but we failed them in so many ways: community, government, school system, the workforce, and then we let them go as adults, and then we're like, you should thrive. Thrive how?
Right.
There were no tools or resources, foundation
Yeah.
for them. So then we look at the 23, 24 and like, man, they should know better.
Right. Yeah.
These 24, 25-year-olds is 16, 17.
So you would certainly say that a part of the dilemma that we are facing in these communities is the lack of education in these communities as well. The foundation they're teaching. In other words, you talk about reading on a certain level, they still are very low on that. They have not really been exposed to the appropriate things. So therefore, their only counter is to act juvenile and do juvenile things. But now they got the funds.
Yeah, now they got they're adults.
Yeah.
Body wise, probably, but not mentally.
Okay.
That's different. And then, like, you think about a lot of things what kids are experiencing in Wilmington, in the city, that's trauma. Trauma will stagnate you mentally, right?
Yeah.
So we think they're moving up in age and they're really stuck. Like, you will be stuck. And a lot of our kids, and firsthand working with this age group of 20 to 20, from 18 to 24, they're stuck. There are some things I expected going in for them to know. And I was like, oh, I got to operate like I'm like,
okay.
They're 16, 17. They're the same age as the other group of kids I'm working with at Job Corps.
That's that whole millennial was a little bit beyond the millennials, but I hear what you're saying. I just wish that who is the city council person? Well, we ain't gotta say names. What district is that in?
For Vandiver, near Vandiver Ave, that is the second. I mean, I'm the second. That's the third district. So that's Danthea Oliver's, Councilmember Oliver's district, where that happened in the 600 block of North Jefferson Street. I think that's West Side. But no, I think that's is that my district? North Jefferson Street?
600 block. I don't know if
600. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's over West Side.
Okay. Well, you better check it out because I don't want people to say she don't even know where her own district is.
Yeah.
But we need to probably start the community because both of them, if it was your district or if it's and Xanthia Oliver's, then there needs to start being some conversation. Because I heard y'all got some more money in the budget for the city council. Why don't we start investing some of that money in greater police presence, or forget about police presence, mental health services, some of the services, some of the wraparound services that I've heard you argue about many times. Why don't we try to think about investing some of the money into those things?
Sounds good. That sounds great.
Oh,
okay.
But that's it.
But that's it. It sounds good. It sounds great. They'll talk a good talk, right? But like you said, that when it comes time when they have the money or when there's an actual program who says we found a grant, we'll cover the services to do the assessment to start a community response team, which will address the mental health portion. You don't see, that resolution did pass, but now a lot of us have to put pressure on the administration to implement it and to participate with that the outside assessment that's going to come in for the community response team, but you're not going to see anything beyond that.
Yeah, one of the things that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the city elections, but I'm hoping that, whoever runs for mayor because we don't know who all are running. We know one candidate has come forward, but whoever runs for mayor has to be asked these type of questions.
Yeah.
Our community has to be speaking up so that we can hold them accountable. That you did not do what you said. So all too often, I think that these things have been in the front, but no one have really addressed them by saying we need more mental wraparound services, because that's where a lot of the issues are right now. A lot of the poverty, a lot of the drug use, a lot of the violence, it all stems from the psychological piece of it.
No, I agree. My background is in mental health. I was a mental health professional. I did community outreach in the community and did mental health support. And I specifically focused on city. That was most of my clients. I asked to stay in the city. And it's exactly that. And it was like a wraparound service. I would work with kids, but I had to work with the mom, the dad. If the dad was there, I had to work with the family, whoever the guardian was, the other kids in the household, because you can't just work on one individual person and then keep them in that same environment.
Right.
And a lot of people just have a lot of trauma, man. It's a lot of trauma out here.
It is.
Right?
And all you gotta do is drive up and down the streets.
It's a lot of trauma. Yes, it's a
feel
lot of
heaviness too.
you can feel the heavy. With
Yeah.
some people, you can just feel the
Yes.
heaviness of
Yeah.
like the trauma. Like,
Yeah.
yo, I know they've been through a lot. Like,
Yeah.
we all have trauma,
Right.
but there's different levels to this. And there are some kids who are 8, and you won't believe some of the stories I have heard. I worked in DFS. I worked in foster care before. I was a mental health professional. And you won't believe some of the stories I heard that have happened to someone by the time they turn 8.
As a pastor, I hear it all the time, and I see it, and that's why I start saying on some of my shows, we have to move beyond just praying. We have to get help, professional help.
Yeah, professional help.
Yes. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of time, so I want to run to our next topic, which is dealing with a national thing. Kobe is
he's the
national person, but I do want to just bring up, for those of you who have not been following, Donald Trump was indicted a third time. The first time he was indicted for a street worker. Is that what they call it? Street worker?
A street worker, sex worker.
Where I come from, it was a hooker.
But it's kind of old school.
That's old school. I'm old school. I'm sorry. And then he was also indicted for documents inappropriately handling them. But this last one he was indicted for was about overturning the election. But the general question I want to ask, and I wonder what our community is thinking, and that is, do you really think anything is going to happen to Donald Trump?
No.
You don't know?
Don't know. I would love, my first thought is no, because he's white. He's a white man, and he's a white man with money. So he has a lot of things working for him in this case. And I also think this is also fueling people to like him even more. I think this is actually positive for him. Like, it's negative.
His numbers keep going up.
Yes, I said his numbers are going to keep going up, because a lot of people feels like he's an innocent guy who is being charged with these things, right? So if people believe that, and then it's like, oh my gosh, the government is attacking him, right, and trying to knock this man down, now his support is going up.
Yeah.
Right. So this is positive for him. And I don't know. I think hopefully he at least goes to trial at least.
Yeah, let me just say this to you. I just don't understand that part. Later on I'm going to talk a little bit, and please stay tuned for me to talk about the Therese case that will be coming up at the last segment of today. But the thing I keep running into is that how is it that this white privilege can continue to do what it does? How could you support a person who hears the facts? The facts state that he did this, he did that, he did the other. These are facts. This is even okay. Let's say if we just brought the facts out for no reason, facts are still facts. How do you still say he's innocent?
People believe what they want, right? And then I also think white supremacy is strong. Like, thousands of years ago when they were saying, all right, let's create race, let's do this thing. They created a solid foundation of building white supremacy and making sure that they benefit from a system, and that they're generations after generation. So we're the generations after generation, and it still works.
Well, at some point it has to come to a head.
It has
because
to come
I'm
to a
watching
head.
this carefully, because I'm dealing with the more psychological piece of it. I don't deal with all the physical and emotional stuff. I just try to pay attention to what is happening and how he's able to get away. Yes, the rich part, you are absolutely correct. I don't believe nothing's going to happen to him because he's rich. Number two, he is a white male, and he's connected with all the folks who hate him. Look at how many people still voted for him. All the folks who said he was the worst president to us, 45 was the worst president to ever be an American president. But look at how much support he still has.
Yeah, I think a lot of people and Americans are liking him. I think he's very he's just I think despite everything else, he's very like straight to the point, and he'll say whatever is on his mind. And you don't have a lot of people who do that as a politician. People are used to politicians who, even though we might not like what he's saying, right? He's going to say it. And people aren't used to that from politicians. They're used to politicians being polished, right? And watching the things they say and do and their behavior and fitting into this box of what it means to be a pilot. He's completely outside of that box. And people are like, oh my gosh, wow. And there are some people who agree with some of his viewpoints. We have to like accept that there are people out there who agree with some of his viewpoints, and they have all the right to, right? So
I just think he's the wrong messenger. I think I agree with some of his viewpoints.
Yes,
he's the wrong messenger because he's been privileged his whole life. But I hear you. I hear you. And we're gonna watch this one.
I'm watching. I'm gonna see what happens, but like Kobe is the big national, but I see what's happening when stuff pop up on the news.
And he bring it forward.
Yeah, he bring it forward.
Last thing I want to talk about in this segment is in the city of Wilmington, we get ready to have an election. I mean, the nation is going to have an election, but the city is going to have an election. And as of right now, when you're talking about the mayor's office, you talk about the city council, the treasurer. Kobe likes to deal with all of them, but I just like to stay local. That's where we are.
What I care about.
And have you had any? I think it was only one person to run for mayor as of right now.
Yeah, as of right now, just Miss Velda Potter. I know she was the previous city's treasurer.
Yes.
That she ran for mayor last 2020.
Yes.
She lost, and she's coming back for another run. And then we have Mayor Mike Purzycki hasn't officially announced yet, but there's inklings out there that he may run because he does not want to see Ms. Velda in that position.
He doesn't
at all. Yes.
Does he get to choose?
He does not get to choose, but he has he has a lot of power. In regards to being able to persuade people and influence people to follow him. And that's why you saw in 2020 the majority of the current city council were endorsed by him or funded by him and people who supports him like BPNG. So you can go to Delaware campaign finance reports and look up each city council's campaign finance reports, and you'll see who donated to them. So look at the individual names and the organizations, because you have to report anyone gives you over $100. But that's also another thing. Some people would donate and say, I'm gonna give you $99.
Yeah.
Right. Or someone might donate and say, you know what? I'm gonna have this donation go through my cousin. Right. So then it goes through the cousin name, but the whole time Sinead Darby supported him. But I didn't want my name on there, but I want to give you the $600
so
max.
You supported the mayor too. You just had someone else's name in there.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You just told your playbook.
I just told the playbook that I know that's happening currently. Because I have people reach out to me and say, like, I want to support you, but I can't, and I want to give you the max, but I might have my wife send the money, right? So I know what's happening. So I know those things. So I know that it's happening with them.
Okay.
Like,
So I made the comment about, he doesn't get to choose. I'm sure he'll announce if he's going to run, and if he doesn't, whoever else runs. But what I'm just hoping for this time, and I don't have a candidate. I just hope whoever becomes the mayor of the city of Wilmington will look at the holistic view and not just tunnel. And there's a lot of things that people really want to do. They want to help with this violence. It affects all of us. I'm a pastor, and my congregation is affected whenever there's violence in the street because there's a lot of their grandchildren. My members, there's a lot of their children. They're themselves. I want to deal with the poverty in our city because I think when we promised that we were going to do something with the port, and it did not happen. It's a state issue now, but it was a city issue. It became a state issue. And then with the businesses that we're bringing, recognizing the skill set of the city, I think that we need to start making sure that we have those manufacturing jobs that's paying good, so people can make an honest wage in the city. because
I
what's
agree.
happening right now is that we're going deeper and deeper into poverty. The education system is not working to the level that it does. And you can't blame the mayor, you can't blame the city for the education side, but they can become more actively involved. They can start asking for resolutions. Let us take over our own school. There are things the city can do. We got to find a mayor who's willing to invest in more than buildings, but bodies, making sure that they are really invested in building up a people. Not just, and this is not just for black, because there's poor white people as well. There's poor Latino people. There's poor black people. But I just think right now, when we're dealing with this next election, it's critical. It's critical.
I think so. It's a game changer for me, especially for the city. We see the population of the riverfront increasing, right? And it's mostly people who are not Wilmingtonians who are there, and mostly Caucasian people. There are, of course, some black and brown people down there, but the majority of people who are moving there are white, right? So now we live in a black or brown city now.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what another 4 years of development would look like. And it was going to change our city where it's not a black or brown city. And I'm very proud to be from the city of Wilmington, knowing that it's a black or brown city. Like, I'm proud of those type of things in the black history that the city has. And I think that if our city changes in the demographics, it also changes who has power. So then the person who represents that 4th district is not going to be a black person anymore. Now we're going to have someone who doesn't represent that whole district, who just pretty much represents the riverfront and downtown, because that is growing in size and number. And do you really think they want, in most cases, a black person to represent them? We see that in the 8th district. How many black people ever represented the 8th district? Because we know that's a primarily wealthy or white district, right?
Yeah.
And they're not, like, unless they're like a black white person, that's a whole nother conversation. Like, to really represent the 8th district, you have to be able to relate to that population, and that's what's going to happen to the riverfront and downtown. So I think that's going to change the power dynamics and how black and brown people are situated into our city. So this election is key, because this current mayor is not interested in investing in people. It's about buildings, bringing new people in. They have a whole marketing campaign and they put a lot of money into it. It's called It's Time Wilmington. Do you see that in Southbridge? It's Time Wilmington.
Well, they're stopping my stuff,
right? You're not going to see that campaign, because that campaign is marketed out to get people to come here, not to say it's time, Wilmington, for you guys to invest and live in your city. They're not saying that. They're acting like, we have to look at the actions and things they're saying, and not what some of the stuff they're saying, but stop believing everything they're saying and look at their actions. What are they putting money into? A marketing campaign for people to come and move here, not for us to be able to afford to live at the riverfront.
Wow. And we're going to close with that, not with that, but I also wanted to ask you if there was one more piece about the 4th district situation that went on with the ethics committee.
Okay.
And we were out of time a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to get your update on that.
Yeah, so it was actually 3rd district council member, Xanthia Oliver. So probably last March, so we're in 2022, around February, March, city council was aware that there was HUD money that was mismanaged and missing. Right. And there was a whole bunch of issues and violations that HUD was giving us, and that we had to pay them back. And it was going to come from the citizens, right, that had to pay this money back. So now I had a lot of questions. And in the questioning, I found out that the organization Our Voices, I believe, was actually ran by council member Oliver's brother, Norman Oliver, right? So in finding this out and knowing the connections and kind of some of the conversations that happened on the street about the particular group of people in regards to the development and their connections to how they're treating people in the city, I was just like, something about this seems fishy. So there was an ethics complaint that was submitted to see if Councilmember Oliver was aware that she was giving her brother money. And to come to find out, she was aware, it was in the documentations, that Our Voices, an organization that I'm pretty sure she's very familiar that her brother runs, right? And she voted yes for her brother to get the money from HUD, and then he mismanages it. We have missing money. There's all these violations. So the ethics committee, literally a year later, finally makes a decision. And the only reason that happened is because I kept pushing it. They were not trying to go through with the investigation, the ethics committee. I had to keep emailing them. I need an update on this. I need up every few, like I was like, at this point, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to happen when it happened. But March, April of this year, that's when they came out that she was in violation, and she actually did, for that one particular incident, yes, voted. Now, to think about that, that makes me wonder what would happen if a complaint was submitted to look at her time in city council. She's been city council for about, what, 6 years now? In that 6-year period, what other ordinances were voted for her to give her brother money that she voted yes to, right? So that conversation, we didn't even have that yet. We're just talking about HUD. And then what happened is that there's no real accountability. So the reprimand was pretty much a meeting with her and then publishing a statement and putting it on the website. I didn't even know what happened. I did another update with the committee. Hey, what's going on? Oh, we already finalized that. I was like, okay, y'all didn't even tell me. So then I went on the website and I saw that it was there. And I'm like, people don't know about this. So then the news, everybody started to report about it. And then after that, I was like, hey, let's put in an accountability piece for a censorship. So censorship is basically not to like censor in the sense of what the word sounds like, right? Like censor is to silence someone. Like it wasn't to silence her. A censorship in regards in how you would define it in short is that it's basically saying that city council is acknowledging that you did this thing. So the censorship is saying, we know you did this and it was wrong, and we're holding you accountable as a city council for this particular action. So the censorship was put in. Council member James Spadola, who's the Republican in our group, he voted yes. I voted yes, and everyone else voted no.
Wow.
To holding her accountable for that one piece of action. A lot of people were very concerned about more than that money is missing. And all of those things. They were more concerned with, oh, her emotions and feelings right now. And she shouldn't have to keep reliving this and going through this. Like it was more about them being friends with her and caring about how she's feeling for voting yes for her brother getting money. It is wrong. It is unacceptable. And when it happened, I did put in the request for the resolution, but I can't control when that resolution come out, because someone was saying, why do it months later? Why not do it then? One, I didn't even know that the reprimand happened until I reached out. And then once I found out, I put a request into law department, and they draft it and give it to me, and then we assign it to. So that's how it ended up in June, from April, May, June. That's how long the law department took. I wish it all would come together, but it just didn't happen that way. But accountability is lacking. People on city council are friends with each other. They don't want to hurt each other's feelings. They don't want to hold each other accountable, and they can't separate personal from business, right? A lot of people take things very personal, right? It's to the point where it's like, because you voted no to my legislation or don't support it, you don't like me personally, right? And that's on all levels that I'm dealing with, and even navigating friendships with some people I have on a state level. I'm trying to explain, like, this is like, I got to always start out, this is not personal. I love you. But as a politician, I'm not feeling what you did, right? And I have to address this as whoever I am in that capacity of me speaking to them. But here in Wilmington and in Delaware, everyone takes everything personal. So that's pretty much what happened. Nothing really happened. Even if the censorship passed, all it was for it to be on record. And I already knew going in that wasn't going to happen. I knew I didn't have the support, but it was for the record.
So basically, to sum it all up, people can do what they want to do, and as long as they got the right relationships, they're going to be able to just do what they want.
Yes. Imagine this.
Okay.
Imagine if I have a nonprofit.
Okay.
Black Mothers in Power.
Okay.
Let's say we got that HUD money to build housing for single moms or something. Let's say I got that money. Shanae Darby, and I voted for Black Mothers in Power to get that money. And, you know, people don't know I did, but I was like, I'm going to vote for my nonprofit to get some money so we could build these houses. And then the money is mismanaged and missing. Do you think, what do you think they would have done to me?
Well, to you.
What do you think they would have done to me?
Well, to you, you'll be under the jail.
My goodness.
But I guess it's about relationships.
And me. It's
It's
about relationships
okay.
because
I
I
got your
don't have,
message.
yeah. If it was me and my nonprofit who did that,
Yeah.
and it was something I was connected to, you would not have, they would have been asking for me to resign.
I clearly understand. That was a good example. On that note, we'll be right back. And we're back. I just want to remind you right after this segment, we're going to have one more segment, which is going to deal with the Therese family update. I think you should stay tuned. Shanae,
Yes.
what's going on with Shanae Scoop?
Yeah, so I have a few things. Just got back from the national convention in Boston. It was exciting. One, I never been to Boston, so it was a nice city. Based on the places I went to.
Okay, no, very nice.
Yeah, so and then I was looking up like the demographics and population. I'm like, there's no black people here. No, I come from a black city. But yeah, so but
good food though.
Yeah. We went to a few restaurants and ate. But I was really there for the convention. I was there for about 3 days. I really wanted to, as I'm trying to get into learning more about the NAACP and trying to revive the Wilmington chapter. I really wanted to. I've been talking to a lot of people on national level. Really wanted to put like a face to a name both ways, so they see me, I see them. Build relationships. I think is so key and important. I also networked and talked to a lot of people within our region. So we're considered Region 2, which is with a lot of the New England states. I think we're like the last state because it's like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, and then we're in that Region 2 piece. And we had a regions meeting. And that's when I was able to really see and network and meet with people. One thing I noticed is that as each state was being called out, it was like, in the beginning, hey, shout your state out. Delaware, woo, woo, New York, New Jersey, Vermont, they organize it. They were able to mobilize over 50 people. That room was packed. On one side with just New York people, one side with just New Jersey people. All of these people, Delaware, we had like 6 people.
Well, small state.
Well, nah. The comparison to our population of who should have been there, they mobilized, they raised money. One chapter in New Jersey raised millions of dollars, right? They're like really mobilizing people and making it transparent and open for people to join.
Okay.
And that was embarrassing. I'm sorry to say. I think there's a lack of being organized. There's a lack of transparency and allowing people to participate in the NAACP on a state level and on a local level. I think there's so much work that could be done. So like me trying to come into the Wilmington branch, now I'm thinking next year the convention is in Las Vegas and then after that is in Charlotte. They plan 2 years ahead of time. We need to be fundraising and mobilizing now to get as many people from Wilmington chapter to be represented there, because on the regions level there is a regions conference and people from those states represent on that region conference. So we do have 2 people who are on there, which is Richard Smith, who's the state conference president in Delaware. He automatically gets a seat because he's the president. And then we also have someone else who represents as the secretary who's from Delaware on the region. But we really need more representation. We need more voices who will be there. So it was actually quite embarrassing for when they called Delaware.
Because we'll change that.
Yeah, we that was specifically for the Wilmington chapter. It's going to change. I know for a fact it's going to change. We're in the middle of an investigation. It has been submitted. The nationals, I spoke to them. They said they're aware of it. They're going to let us know when the hearing date is. Let me know what the process is and the bylaws on how much time we have. In regards to that, so there's going to be change, even if it has to go through the investigation or we just got to go around the person who thinks they're running it now. Either way, change is going to happen with the NAACP chapter, because I think it's so key and important that people from the city I live in have access to legal. We don't have that. I'm so sorry to say. I don't think we need it.
Yeah.
And there's no way I can go on the Wilmington chapter right now and fill out a form and say, hey, I need help. Like that's what other cities and other chapters are doing. It's like I went on their website. It's like, yeah, look at the website. All you got to do is fill this out and we'll contact you. We don't have that level of transparency and ease.
Okay.
In regards, so I'm excited that I went next year in Las Vegas. I want to go to that one,
Okay.
and stay for a few extra days or days after, so that will be fun. But also thought of another conversation to have. There are a group of people, Black people, who are interested in hosting a Black people conference. to really talk about and get all of the black people into the one room to talk about. And when I say black, I mean black people. Right. So like NAACP, anybody can join, and that's okay. That's cool. Y'all do what y'all want. But I'm talking about black people to talk about black issues from different, and I don't even want black people who speak the same, from different perspectives and thoughts to come together and say, how do we, from different, because I don't want everybody to be the same, but how do we unify on something, right? To say we need to have a black agenda. Delaware is about to be hot. We got Joe Biden, who just said this is his headquarters, specifically the city of Wilmington is his headquarters for his campaign. He's going to be here frequently, in and out. You have a lot of big, on a governor level, on a federal level, Congress level, black people running for seats, something that we never seen before, right? And the level that we're seeing it, where there's black people on every single level, I think, running for office. And like this conversation has to happen. What does the black agenda look like? And Delaware is probably the 7th or 8th blackest state.
Yeah, 8th.
8th, I think it is, in the country.
Right.
People, I didn't realize that. I knew Wilmington was, and I'm proud of that, but I didn't know Delaware was. And that's like, okay, we have some type of power if we can pull it collectively together throughout the state. And I think we're small enough to do that. We're gonna drive through this in 2 hours, right? So I can provide more information on like the next. I had looped in with them. I'm gonna get some more information about the Black People Conference planning. Hopefully, we could do something here next summer. Make it a thing, kind of come up with an agenda.
Please make sure that
Yeah.
I'm aware.
Of course. And then the last thing I have, I don't know. Okay, I got time. It's about CCWATU. It's the City of Wilmington Autonomous Tenant Union, right? It's so important for renters. And I think about the culture of Delaware, I think about the culture of Wilmington. Unions aren't really a thing here, right? That's not really a conversation. And I think it's because of the history of certain people not wanting to see workers or renters or people from oppressed groups organize and come together. And with the renters union that's happening here in Wilmington, I think it's so important that renters are aware of it, that you can network together and fight the system. You can network together and find better solutions and ways for you to be able to have affordable housing, to be able to live in decent housing. I lived in Wilmington. These rental units are trash. Like, I remember I was looking and I'm like, you're charging $1,200 for this? Like, I would never live here. Like, I would never. And I had options because I can go live with my mama all the way up until today. I can bring all my kids. She's not going to like it. But I know that door is always open. Like, if I ever, can't find somewhere to live or be. But a lot of people don't have those options, right?
Absolutely.
So they go and just be like, you know what? This $1,200, I'm going to figure it out. He's not checking my credit report. My credit, they're not going to ask for my record. So people are out here hopeless and just signing anything. And then the landlord is able to run rampant and charge them whatever and let them live in whatever. That's unacceptable. With a union, though, it provides renters with the protection against those things, right? So I think it's so important. So I can share like a flyer or a website where people can go get more information, join. Currently, every 6 weeks, there's a workshop to train people or teach people about the landlord tenant code, what your rights are as a renter, what a landlord rights are. You need to know both as you're navigating the system. And then there's another webinars that happen twice a month where you can talk to a qualified attorney who can answer any specific questions about the problem, struggle, difficulty you're having with your landlord or home you're living in. And they're connected to like Classy and other groups who are providing free resources to low income communities in regards to housing. So those things are so key and important. I think there's a lot of things happening in the city, a lot of movement, a lot of organizing. And I think like this next year is about to be crazy. We're going to see a lot of people announcing elections in the next few months, because that you have to run for at least a year. You got to get that work in. So that year is approaching in September. So I think in the next few months, we're going to see a lot of announcements happening. We're going to see a lot of issue campaigns come up talking about different things and what people want as we see more elected officials coming out. And I also think there needs to be a movement where the community is saying, okay, government, do your thing. We want y'all to we want to hold y'all accountable. But how do we come together as a community, the Black People's Conference, and say, how, like in other cities, they have like co-ops. They have They're like in Florida, they have the new Black People's Party or something. They buy houses and give them to single moms. And that's what they're doing. Like, we need to think on that level. Like, how are we doing self-help at the same time? We're, of course, hold everyone else accountable in the system because we still have to live in it. And it's hard to escape it. But then how do we do self-help in the middle of all that? I think it has to be a two-pronged approach. But other than that, that's all I have for you today.
Well, which is a very good update because you're able to talk about the NAACP, and I'm glad to see that there's movement and that you had a chance to go and see how it operates,
Yeah.
and get some face-to-face time with people, as well as the Black People's Conference, which I'm now interested in because all the fights that I get in trying to help other people, we need some help.
We do.
You talked about the NAACP, how you should be able to go on their website to get legal assistance. Those things are needed very much here in the city as well as in the state of Delaware. So we're gonna make it all happen. I ask that you would please just stay tuned for just a few more minutes after this segment. We are going to talk about the Therese family. I think you would be very much happy that you stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we're back. I just wanted to continue to give you an update of where we are as it relates to the Therese family. I promised that I would not allow it to go away silently or we just forget about the case. Last week I was out of town and was not able to give you an update, but I did have a very serious and direct conversation with the Therese family because it was important that we come to an agreement that the truth is the government is much stronger than we are. We are minorities. As a matter of fact, we are a double minority. The government is controlled and ruled by the majority, which is a bunch of people who really clearly feel that they will protect each other at any cost. When I looked at what's going on with Donald Trump, I really began to realize that when a people are with you, they're with you. And it doesn't matter what you do, they're going to always stand by you. And I've learned that white privilege has its benefits. I watched some of the politicians that I was very connected to. And when certain other politicians ran into a problem with me, how they just drifted out of the way and tried to find a polite way not to be near. White privilege is real. And I had to have this tough conversation with the Therese family. They already knew it, but putting it into language that is understandable sometimes is beneficial. And white privilege is alive and is well in every aspect of even government here in the city of Wilmington, specifically, is where we're talking. We had an opportunity to meet with all levels who were involved or who could solve this issue of harassment and racial intimidation. Those are the charges that we brought forward, and those were the charges that we believed, without a shadow of a doubt, that were committed by this attorney who felt that it was her job to police, it was her job to harass, it was her job, in essence, to remove the trash from her neighborhood. Let's start with the police department. We met with them several times. And yes, the chief of police, being a minority, sometimes we find that there are a lot of symbols, especially when white privilege has to be on display. We met with him several times. He assured us we would get to the bottom of it. Well, the bottom of it, in his opinion, was that if the attorney general does not choose to prosecute, nothing we can do. That's a shame, because the police department is separate from the AG's office. They should be able to arrest based on probable cause. But he felt that why present a case that would not be taken up by the criminal justice, or should I say the attorney general's office. I've come to the conclusion on this. While you may not want to take the case, she should have been charged. Let her work herself through the system. One of those individuals who were in charge slipped and said, "It's so hard and difficult to get out of the system." I wonder if you'll pay attention to that when our young brothers and sisters find themselves arrested for things that they were not guilty of, and some things they were. But no one gives a second thought to how hard it is for our African American young brothers and sisters and Latino brothers and sisters who find themselves under the feet of the judicial system. It's a shame. So we met with them, and basically they were of no help. We then met with the city of Wilmington. I never got an opportunity to meet with the mayor. I'm not of those who he desired to meet with, and I can accept that because at the end of the day, I've never asked him for nothing and don't plan to. But it is very difficult when you're working very hard for people not to have all branches of government to work with you, because I consider myself to be one of the leaders in our African American community. Based on my track record, I have proven that to be true. But he felt that it was not important, as I've tried several occasions to meet with him. And that's fine. However, I did meet with L&I, and after meeting with L&I, we saw their process. And in my opinion, their process was fair. They were able to go through and respond to the complaints that were given to them. And whether it be the nighttime when they showed up, they were able to justify why they were able to come, why they did come and go and inspect and examine the information that was given to them. As we said in the meeting with them, we concluded, you did your job. And as long as you're doing that for both the minorities and the majority, then we're fine with that, because we want everybody to be treated equally under the policies and procedures that are set in the city of Wilmington. So I say to the commissioner for L&I, thank you for meeting with us, and thank you for taking the time to share. We also met with the Attorney General. Well, at that meeting, I had an opportunity to slowly present the full case. We had a PowerPoint presentation with motion so that they will be able to see the harassment, hear, just in case they would claim that we never knew she said this, we never knew she did this. We showed them several different clips. This woman didn't just harass this family once. She continued to do it until it appeared on the Coffee with Curry show, and it went kind of spread wild throughout the community, as well as some places. There are some distant places as well. Once it started being noted and people start talking about it, then she calmed down. She ran to Rehoboth Beach, to her beach home, hid out there for a while and chilled out. I shared all of that. I showed them not so much her going to her beach home, but we know that as a reality. But I shared very clearly that she harassed them from the time of the backyard, following them back and forward, making slurs and sharing things and making comments, how she harassed by sweeping and hitting the woman's car with her broom. She continued to act like she was sweeping the street and was hitting her car with the broom until she had to come out of her house and move her car. We shared with them how she called them a dirty piece of you know what, and called him a rodent. And we shared all of that testimony, and we shared it from her words, not from ours. It was a part of our presentation. When the presentation was over, the comments from the Attorney General really mesmerized me. She said, well, we've heard from everybody else. Let us hear from the Terezes. Well, I was a little shocked. Terezes spoke, but I think they shocked her. Mrs. Terez was very emotional, but yet polite and professional most of the time. She shared with a very firm and stern voice that never should any human being be treated the way she was. She shared with a very firm and stern voice that this attorney should have been arrested. Had her husband did what this attorney did to them, they would have been arrested and there will be a trial going on now. But white privilege, this is her words, has its privileges. And after the Attorney General was shocked that they had responded to even a more forceful level than we were responding, because in that meeting you had the NAACP, you had some council representation, as well as myself and the family. The DA was there. I mean, I'm sorry, the Attorney General was there, her staff, and the Wilmington Police Department chief and his captain. We were all in the meeting and they were shocked that she had such still hurt and emotion over the trauma, the emotional trauma that she had to endure, that her son spoke up. And when her son spoke, it was shocking as well. He shared how hurt he was. There was a moment when they talked about what happened in his life. And I don't want to get into the details of that, but that created even another level where I saw tears coming from people's eyes that normally are too professional to cry. But then that part of the meeting was over. The Attorney General then says, well, there's been a lot of emotions. There's been a lot of comments and concerns, but we feel this is not chargeable. White privilege has privileges. If what was presented from a person's own actions would have been from a minority doing it as the perpetrator, they would be in jail. They will be looking for an attorney. But because she's so well connected, I understand why certain people don't want to meet with me, because I deal with the root of the issue, the underlying surface things. I don't try to make it emotional. As a pastor, I do preach very high energy. However, as a scholar, I look into the issues and we deal with them. They believe that no one watches this show. They believe that no one cares. They're just minorities who just always got something to say. But after that meeting, it became clear. I had to take a few days to think about Plan B. We came and we decided we would do a protest. We submitted for permits. No one from the city ever got back to us. We weren't going to worry about that. We were just going to move forward and have one. But then the Lord spoke and said these, let it be, the moment will come when there will be a need for the minorities to assist in the majority's confusion and chaos that will occur. Something will break out. Something will happen. And when it does, we will join the forces to help break this white privilege attitude. The city of Wilmington is experiencing so much. Racism is live and well. It is just a little bit more polished than in the past. We have too many phones and we have too many cameras going. So therefore, people are more cognizant of what they say and when they say it. But after going through this case with the Terezes and making sure that we documented and had everything in line, having a Latino chief of police, having a mayor who said he cares about people of color, because remember, we did bring the HBCU week to the city of Wilmington. After all of that, this is a classic case. We can talk about the McDowell family, how they were treated like animals. We can talk about all of that, but this is a classic case where I believe that they would prefer violence than doing what is right. It is almost as if they're saying, had there been violence, we would be able to move. Had she hit the Terezes, or had the Terezes hit her, then we would be able to move. But the law doesn't state that. The law for harassment states that if a person is intimidating, if a person is forcefully doing something that is against the desire of another, this is unfair. Wilmington, we deserve better. I know there's a lot of friction in the African American clergy. I know there's a lot of friction with the NAACP, and certain groups feel they're not doing nothing. But every time I've called upon the NAACP, they were right there. They were, as a matter of fact, they were even in the meeting when there was no other ministers available to be there. They were there. But this is how white privilege continues to thrive, by keeping us divided. There will be a moment where we will have to come together. This family decided to go legally, to handle it appropriately, not to. We know Mrs. Therese. Matter of fact, we know Mr. Therese. We know them. And for those of you who've been in Wilmington, know that they are not people who are scared of anyone. As a matter of fact, her response to the attorney general was so shocking that it just sent waves through that little conference room. She said, had I known it was going to turn out like this, it would have been a different response. This is unfair. Should we have to go to jail just to be treated right? Because it appears that the push is, you colored people, just go ahead and I dare you to react. And if you react, I'll put your butts in jail. They didn't react inappropriately. They reacted appropriately. They called the police. As a matter of fact, they even called city council. You know what the problem is? We got too many Black people and Latino people who are not representing their people. Look at white privilege. They covered her. When it was decided nothing would happen to her, it didn't matter what kind of proof we put up. Nothing was going to happen to her. There was a meeting on this, but it wasn't with us. They got together and they said, no, we're not going to do anything to her. It's just, she was confused. She didn't know. She felt lied to. That's what the Bar Association said in their letter. This is unfair. This is not right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to let this one rest for a little while. I owed you this explanation. I had a conversation with the Thereses this week, and we're probably going to bring them on one more time just so that they can express their appreciation to all of you who've been following, all of you who have been telling them, keep moving, you will be there to do the protests. It was the Lord leading me in a different direction this time. We decided not to. Not that we didn't have people who were interested, because we don't need a lot of people. We just need enough to disrupt. And I'm well aware of that. I don't need 10,000. I just need 10 thoroughly immersed. And that's all it would have taken. But we had way more than that who were very much interested, because people are being hurt and misunderstood. People are being disrespected and they are not represented. Can I have a call to every last leader in the African American community? You've heard me come on this show, and very seldom do you hear me directly go against certain people. I went directly against Hanifa Shabazz because what she did and has been doing is basically preying, preying, on Black people. Because you have a certain name and title doesn't mean you are what you say you are. And what she did to the city council president was unexcusable and cannot be tolerated ever again. Even what she did to us here in the Southbridge section, while she has several of the people who have some voice over here, tried to turn them against me, but I have a proven track record that will stand. You've heard me come up against her. You've heard me say her name a lot, because I don't want her to ever think we're going to ever forget what she's done to this community, how she's been a good person to perpetrate the separation and give white privilege more avenue. We won't forget that. And we're going to remember that, especially if she decides to run for anything again in this state. But beyond her, I've tried to just see things, hear things, and move on. I'm asking for all of you who have pastors, for all of you who have politicians and people We have to come together. There won't be any meeting because that doesn't, we got to come together. If you are from a district and you're African American or Latino, what is the best interest, not for your pocketbooks or pockets, but what is the best interest for the people you represent? We have criticized Shanae because sometimes she tends to be a little bit more far left than we desire for her to be. But I believe with the right mentorship, she understands she can become a great voice in this community. I'm very proud of our what's her name, Councilwoman Harley. I've watched carefully how she's worked and tried to work with both groups, given her profession as a professional as well as a city council person. There are many of them we disagree all the time, but our disagreement should never come to a place where we become disagreeable. We have to come together. Something is going to erupt. And when it erupts, we're going to need to be able to stand strongly together. So what? They've given you a grant. I watched some of the white privilege. I applied for certain things, and at first it was looking good, and then all of a sudden it was taken away. But East Iron Fair is still doing exceptionally well, and everything that was on my vision to be completed is being done. This is not arrogance speaking. This is truth. We have to come together. I'm very hurt with a lot of remorse that the Torres family did what they were supposed to do and was disrespected, overlooked, and used as an outcast by the white privilege of this city. I'm asking African Americans, it's time to come together. I am asking Latinos, it's time to come together. While building buildings are great, building people is greater. We have to build one another. We have to find representation that will reflect our values. The shootings on the streets, the robbing, the drug use is not because we just want to do it and we were formed to do that. It is birthed out of hurt and it's birthed out of pain. We can't get much relief, especially when we try. And we continue to find that white people can do what they want to do. The question may be asked, Pastor, are you against white people? Absolutely not. I am not against them. I am for justice for all. But in this case, it was very clear. Nothing was going to happen to her. I give shout out, kudos to the new Speaker of the House who saw this and decided, I'm not going to renew that contract. I'm glad somebody was able to see, but her politics in the city was much stronger than it was on the state level. And the city decided, we'll just let this die over. They'll get over it because they've gotten over everything else. We've stepped on them before. We've even threw them down before, and they've gotten over it. But let me assure you, there are people in the city, not just Pastor Curry, there are others who will be there when the eruption occurs. And when it does, we're going to remind of days like this, the Doles family and many others. When tried to get a little relief, the pressure became greater. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you who continue to watch me. And I pray that you don't allow the white privilege to mess up your psychological formation and make you think I'm an opportunist. I do not get paid to do any of this. I do not receive any benefits to do any of this. I do this because it's a call on my life to help those who are voiceless. Until the next time we get together, may the Lord God bless you real good.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Source. Be sure to tune in next Sunday at 5 p.m.